strange new
worlds.
You asked. We listened. It's happening.
Wow, I'm so glad I finally get to share this news with you guys.
Speaking just for myself, I have never received more love from a fan base than I have from the Star Trek family.
Without you, this wouldn't be happening, so thank you so much.
I can't wait to put on that gold Starfleet uniform and deliver number one right along Captain Pike and Spock.
It is a huge honor.
And it means even more for us to be able to announce this right now at a time when so much of the planet is hurting.
The ethos of Star Trek is so curious and welcoming and unifying.
And we're going to get to work on a classic Star Trek show that deals with optimism and the future.
Here we go. I can't wait.
And I guess there's only one more thing to say. Hit it.
Channel open. Welcome back to WeeklyTrek, a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. I am your host, Alex Perry.
What's today's date? The date.
Today's show was recorded on May 15th, 2020, and is current through Star Trek Picard Season 1, so beware of spoilers. All right, let's get into the show.
Good day, Voyager, and welcome to A Briefing with Neelix. It's a catchy title, isn't it?
WeeklyTrek is a 30-minute news show covering the biggest stories from the Star Trek franchise. We are in a new golden age of Star Trek. There are 6 television shows in production, possibly more on the way, and enough merchandise to fill the Jerome wormhole. And I'm sure by now you will have noticed what was different about my little intro from last episode. So stick with me, and I'll help you sort the real facts from a lot of the Dominion propaganda that you'll find online. But I can't do this alone. And my guest this week is returning guest, Jenn Tifft. Jenn, welcome back to WeeklyTrek.
Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for having me back.
You know, whenever there is big news in the Star Trek universe, you are the first person that I call because I know that you will share my giddy excitement.
Giddy excitement is the right word. I've been giddy since I heard the news.
So normally at this point in the show, I would ask you what you're feeling good about Star Trek, what's got you moving at Warp 10, but this week we're not going to bother. Why? Because it's pretty obvious what we're all feeling good about this week. It is the announcement of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the new Captain Pike, Mr. Spock, number 1 Star Trek TV show that will be moving to CBS All Access at some point in the future. So, without further ado, let's move into the week's top stories.
There's a war going on, and I'm a reporter.
Yes, that's right. So as you heard at the top of the show, this is a huge week for Star Trek. After a number of quiet weeks of the COVID-19 pandemic, we got the big announcement that we've all been waiting for since, well, actually about a year ago. So Discovery Season 2 ended in late April of 2019. It's now the middle of May 2020. And so a full year later, we have the announcement that Captain Pike, Mr. Spock, and number 1 will be appearing in an Enterprise-focused Star Trek TV show called Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Now, this has been rumored for a very long time, and for the eagle-eyed amongst you, there have been numerous kind of bits of information sort of flying around online around production weekly listings and Instagram posts and LinkedIn profiles that very, very strongly hinted at the existence of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And it is now formally official. So Anson Mount will be returning as Captain Pike, Ethan Peck as Mr. Spock, and Rebecca Romijn as number 1. They are the only announced cast members for Star Trek Strange New Worlds at this point. It looks like Akiva Goldsman and Henry Alonso Myers, who's new to the Star Trek universe, will serve as the showrunners for the show. Myers was previously an executive producer on The Magicians, which was on Sci-Fi. Alex Kurtzman said about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, when we said we heard the fans' outpouring of love for Pike, number 1, and Spock when they boarded Star Trek Discovery last season, we meant it. These iconic characters have a deep history in Star Trek canon, yet so much of their stories have yet to be told. With Akiva and Henry at the helm, the Enterprise, its crew, and its fans are in for an extraordinary journey to new frontiers in the Star Trek universe. So this is a little different than the last previously announced live action Star Trek show, which was Section 31, where almost a year and a half later, we're still waiting for official confirmation that the show is moving ahead and getting a sense that it is in some kind of pre-production. We know there's been a writer's room put together, but we've not heard anything more about that. It does seem like for Strange New Worlds, they are a bit further ahead in production than we thought. So the series premiere has already been written. It's by Akiva Goldsman with a story by Goldsman, Alex Kurtzman, and Jenny Lumet. There are no additional specifics for the show at this point. We don't know the episode count. We don't know what the international distribution will look like. Will this be on Amazon? Will this be on Netflix outside the US? We only know that in the US it will be on CBS All Access, but we assume that all of that will come in time. And I alluded to the Instagram posts and LinkedIn profiles that have pointed to the existence of Strange New Worlds in the last couple of weeks. And from reading those tea leaves, it does appear as though the show has finished pre-production at this point and is probably poised as soon as lockdowns get lifted in Toronto and people can travel and they can start filming to move into active production for Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So that's very, very exciting. Lots of people have been speculating about whether this will be an episodic Star Trek television show, a return to something more akin to what we had in the 1990s. There was no confirmation in the announcement today about Star Trek Strange New Worlds. They kept most of the details about what the show will be under wraps, but you can certainly read between the lines that I think that's the direction that maybe they're looking in. The name Strange New Worlds implies that opening sort of monologue of Captain Kirk and Captain Picard talking about visiting Strange New Worlds. That does seem to point in an episodic direction. Anson Mount, when previously asked about whether he would be interested in starring in a Star Trek show after his appearance as Pike in Discovery, has said several times that if he were to do that, he would really want it to be an episodic show. And the summary provided by CBS does seem to hint in that direction. Strange New Worlds will follow the crew in the decade before Captain Kirk boarded the USS Enterprise as they explore new worlds around the galaxy. It's official, Jen. We've been speculating on it for a long time. It's now here. It's happening. It's not just happening. It's through pre-production and maybe is poised to, go before the cameras in not too long a time once we get through this COVID-19 mess. How's that got you feeling?
Oh, obviously I'm thrilled. We kind of, like you said, there's so many little clues. We knew it was coming eventually, but what a great surprise that it's actually happening. It's a great, they just stumbled upon something really special with these three. And I don't want to say stumbled, that's not the right word, because it was the casting skill and the actors' skills and everything combined. But there's something just magical about those three and their performances of these characters, and we couldn't just let them go, So it's really exciting.
It definitely does seem like, just from the way they've talked about the reaction to the inclusion of Pike, Spock, and Number One in Discovery Season 2, that they did not really think that they had the kind of magic chemistry on their hands that they ultimately ended up finding there were.
This wasn't the plan. This was not the initial plan, for sure.
For sure, this wasn't the plan because, they seemed like they were moving sort of all guns blazing on Section 31 being the next show after Star Trek Discovery. And it now appears that Strange New Worlds has sort of been slotted in between the two of them because of the massive reaction from the fan community and also the fact that it's taken them a year to get announcements and deals and pre-production in place. If they were thinking while they were filming Season 2 of Discovery that these characters were going to be a hit, we probably would have been having this conversation 6-8 months ago.
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And I love everything about. I love the title. The title is elegant.
I love the title.
I love that it's going to set itself apart from the other current shows, and a nice. I think we're going to get to see a chance to see some. This is my own speculation, but that's what we do here.
That's what we do here.
Some maybe some like harder sci-fi. If you go back to some of my favorite episodic Trek is the ones where you explore these weird scientific themes, and concepts, and it's just, oh man, it's exciting.
And do you think you are, lots of people have been calling for sort of the next announced Star Trek show to be more of a traditional episodic type show. Are you one of those people?
I wasn't one of those people who was like clamoring for a Pike show. I love it. I'm glad it's there, but that, that wasn't I wasn't one of the very vocal people really, some people were really, really into that idea. But, now that I think about it, if we're going to get some more high concept sci-fi, that's really where we're going to get it in episodic television like that. And, hey, I am all for every single Trek and every single incarnation, every way they want it, which way they want to give it to us. And it's funny when I've, in the past always wanted and wished for a Star Trek anthology series. And it seems instead of an anthology series, I'm getting an anthology of series.
Right.
Somehow, we're even luckier. So I think it's going to be, obviously, if you're thinking about what it's going to be like, the template's got to be something like a New Eden as far as the modern Trek that we've seen. That's where I think they're going to go. But I really like the idea of them doing that episodic format, but in the current conditions we're in the current atmosphere, the current. It's just gonna feel new and fresh, even though it's going back to the old ways, just because we're now in this timeline of grittier, darker, not non-episodic, more serialized shows. So it's really, the more I think about it, the more excited for it I am.
That is such a good way of putting it. We didn't get the anthology series that was teased when Brian Fuller was hired to do Discovery, but we did end up with an anthology of series.
Even better.
I mean, what a perfect way to describe current Star Trek, right? Because this is number 6.
Oh my gosh.
But we know there's a 7th out there.
Yeah.
Alex Kurtzman said to Trek Core before Picard was on air that there were 2 unannounced shows at some point in development, and that did not include Section 31 in that count. So Strange New Worlds must have been one of those shows, which means there's still
one out there.
Still one out there. I mean, we're up to 7 shows.
My goodness.
So under the anthology format, I mean, if you decided to do one of these shows a year, that's still 7 years worth of content. But now we're getting multiple seasons for each of these shows, which is just incredible.
And they all have their own voice, their own style, and it's so exciting to see all the different takes on Trek.
And I am really interested by the announcement that Henry Alonso Myers will be one of the showrunners. I myself have never watched The Magicians, but from everything I've heard about it, it does seem like it's one of those sort of lighter, fun kind of sci-fi, sci-wi-fi, the channel. Sort of rompy shows in the vein of other stuff they've done, like Warehouse 13 and some of those other productions. And actually, I kind of hope they bring a bit of a lighter, fun vibe to this show.
Yeah, me too.
Because as you say, Discovery is a very serious show. Picard is a very serious show. I'm sure Section 31 will be a very serious show. And it would be nice to have a little more zest and pep. And to flash back to the very start of this episode, when I played the short announcement video for this show even existing, it does, the way that, now they've not said very much about it, but the way that Ethan Peck and Anson Mount and Rebecca Romijn are talking about this show does, in my mind, very much hint at them wanting to kind of push the boundaries of some of that lighter atmosphere Star Trek.
Yeah, and it'll be a good middle of the road between what I'm assuming Lower Decks is going to be a little bit more straight comedy. You know what I mean? And then this is kind of, a little bit in between the seriousness of, Discovery Picard and then what I assume Lower Decks is going to be. Oh, there's a place for it. There's a place for every kind of Trek. And we're just so lucky. But I think that announcement video was such a joyful way to introduce this, because those 3 actors are the reason we're getting this show is because of those 3 actors. And I think they understand. I think they really, really, really understand that that's the magic that they have here. And that's what I think it's going to, straight up big 3, adventures, and you know what I mean? I'm sure they're going to put together a wonderful cast, and I'm hoping we see back the Enterprise crew people that we've already seen. Was it the cadet in Ask Now,
Sidhu,
and the lieutenant Amin.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd love to see them, and I'm interested to see who else they put together, but that there's just magic in their big three. There's just magic there too.
It is very, very exciting.
And I get to see the engineering set again.
That's right. And I mean, and I said at the time when Ask Not came out, you don't spend that kind of money to build that magnitude of a digital set just for 20 seconds.
Exactly.
On an 8-minute short that most people will never get the chance to see. Mm-hmm. You're doing that because you're prepping for a Pike show.
Yeah, I said the same thing because they put a lot of detail into that. And I thought if that is all we see, then that's just cruel. Let alone is it, a bad decision, business-wise. It's also just cruel to give me that glimpse of engineering and then say, well, that's it. Bye-bye. Roll credits. But yeah, I'm excited too to see that they've name dropped the chief engineer.
Chief Engineer Louvois.
Louvois.
Or Louvier or something like that.
Yeah, I always think of the candlesticks in Beauty and the Beast because I can't Lumiere, whatever. Mm-hmm. But
I keep thinking of Philippa Louvois from Measure.
Oh yes.
Ain't love grand.
Ain't love grand. Oh man, but yeah. So we already know a little bit about the. Some of the crew members hopefully we'll see, but I also really hope. I'm sorry, I'm going into speculations and hopes we're supposed to do that at the end.
Do it. Do it.
I'm just too giddy about the news. But I also really, really hope that they really take diversity really seriously when they're putting together the rest of the cast here, because it is a little bit of a disappointment that your big three characters are Caucasian, and so hopefully they'll surround themselves with a more diverse crew, because that's really the main criticism that you could see about putting together this show as the next step. But I really think that they'll be conscious of that and take that into account.
It definitely seems to be something that they have taken seriously with the previous productions, so with Discovery and with Picard. But I think I'm quite excited to see if Dr. Boyce makes it into Strange New Worlds. Well, there's not been a lot of Boyce fandom today.
Oh, I can see Boyce and number one being like buddies.
Just knocking back cheeseburgers.
Knocking them back.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's so many possibilities. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
So give me Dr. Boyce.
That's a good wish for that.
All right. Well, we will leave Strange New Worlds there. I'm sure we will learn plenty in the months ahead. No idea yet when it will be going in front of the cameras, because nobody has any idea when anything will be happening with everything going on right now. But speaking of everything going on right now, let's do a quick check-in with Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Lower Decks to see what's going on in regards to their expected 2020 releases. And the news seems to be pretty good, actually. So we'll start with Discovery. Just yesterday, Jeff Russo put a note on his Instagram stories about how he was starting to record the music for Discovery Season 3. He did a Facebook Live a few days ago in which he explained that they were going to be individually recording each of the musicians and then edit all of the tracks together to kind of create that orchestral effect. But that process takes much longer than it does just having everybody in a room. And so, but it is now underway. A few episodes ago, we had worried that the music was really going to hold up Discovery Season 3, not that it would slow it down, but that it would potentially sort of stop it until the musicians could all get together in a room. It does sound like they have sort of sorted it out. And so the wheels are, albeit slowly, spinning towards these episodes of Discovery being fully completed and ready for premiere. So that is moving ahead. And Jeff was talking about how, given all of the sort of technical wizardry that was going into putting this together, he ultimately didn't think that the show would sound all that different than it would if they did the sort of traditional recording for the score. So that's all very exciting. And then Star Trek Lower Decks, we heard right at the beginning of the pandemic from Mike McMahon, in which he indicated that everything was still moving ahead as planned for Lower Decks. And he did provide an update just last week now, 2 months after we all went into the situation, basically reconfirming what he'd already said. He said, I can't give you a specific answer on when Lower Decks is coming out, but we're still working on it and we're on track for when we had planned, which is this year. Animation is kind of uniquely suited for this moment. We didn't shut down production. Safely recording the cast was our biggest challenge because we don't want them leaving their houses. So getting remote setups and stuff was something we had to solve, but it seems like we have. Now, when he talked about this 2 months ago, he said we're on track right now, but of course that could change tomorrow, a week from now, 2 weeks from now. It seems like 2 months from when he mentioned that they are still on track and moving on time. So it does still seem like we should be anticipating Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Lower Decks this year in 2020, and that all the post-production that needs to happen on those shows will continue as planned. Jen, you looking forward to both Discovery and Lower Decks?
Oh, of course. Looking forward to all of it. But yeah, it's great news about Lower Decks 2020. That's, that's not too far. Even if it's at the end of 2020, it's not that far away. I was actually hoping, it seems like now that the way Discovery's delayed and everything, it sounds like they were planning to do Discovery season 3 and then Lower Decks, I guess is what the plan was.
Mm-hmm.
But I was kind of just hoping for Lower Decks next, just something a little lighter and funnier for what the moment in time we're in right now. So I'm really excited for that news. It makes sense that they're still able to do everything for animation. Like you said, it's perfectly suited for this moment in time. So I'm glad things are on track there, and it makes sense too for the music for Discovery. Like they have the technology to get it done. It's a lot harder, more time consuming.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be, once, we see the final product, it will be seamless. I don't, but so I guess that's going to be delayed. Who knows I don't know what they're going to do now. Are they going to do just the Lower Decks first and then Discovery season 3? Or are they going to cram it in and we're going to get a lot of Trek right in a row? I'm all for that if they want to do that. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
I don't think we'll be waiting too much longer. My theory for this week is I have a date in mind for when Discovery season 3 will start. So we'll talk about that later. About what I think that will be. But all good news. We're all moving in the right direction. And, we at the start of this year, we thought we were going to get Picard season 1, Discovery season 3, and Lower Decks season 1, and it does seem like we're still on course to get all 3 of those in 2020.
Yeah. Oh, I hope so. It's funny because I was on Rebecca Romijn's timeline on Twitter. This just because I was looking at everybody's Twitter and seeing what was going on, and she had retweeted something. It was just like her husband doing this ridiculous karaoke dance in their living room with a mask on. It was being ridiculous, and I chuckled. I was like, oh, her husband's really goofy. And then that split second later, I'm like, oh my God, we get Jerry O'Connell in Star Trek 2. We are so freaking lucky.
Yeah. First husband, wife, first officer duo.
Right? How awesome is that? So, oh my God. So we're so lucky to have both of them. They're both so great. And he's so funny. And I've been a fan of his since My Secret Identity in the 80s. But I was a big Sliders fan, in the 90s. But yeah, so we get him, we get Rebecca Romijn, and our number ones, man. That's a pretty strong number one team.
The O'Connell-Romijn household is doing pretty well from CBS this year, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, Star Trek power couple there.
Exactly. So our next story this week, CBS is launching a For Your Consideration campaign for the Emmys this year for its 2 Star Trek productions that qualify for this year's Emmys. That is Star Trek Picard Season 1 and the Short Treks. So Discovery is ineligible for the Emmys this year because Season 2 was in the Emmys last year. The nominations will be announced July 28th. Even if they hit my estimated date for Discovery Season 3, they will not have shown very many episodes at all by the time that rolls around. So the big push is on Star Trek Picard Season 1 and on the Short Treks. They are seeking a nomination for Sir Patrick Stewart as lead actor in a drama series. The rest of the main cast, as well as recurring guests like Brent Spiner, Jerry Ryan, Jonathan Frakes, and Marina Sirtis, are also being championed by CBS. And it's not just on the acting side. They're also looking for nominations for director Huntley Culpepper for the series pilot, and also Akiva Goldsman for the series finale, in addition to, no surprises, Michael Chabon for writing, Jeff Russo for the score, and a few of the other writers for specific episodes as well. They're also seeking short-form nominations for the Short Treks, both as short-form drama series and for Anson Mount as Captain Pike in Ask Not. Voting begins July 2nd. CBS is in the process of sending out screener DVDs to Emmy voters to encourage them to nominate Star Trek for an Emmy this year. Nominees will be announced on July 28th. So Jen, here is my question for you. You are able to secure 2 nominations for an Emmy, one on the acting side and one on the production side. Who do your nominations go to and for what?
I need Short Treks to get one because I want them to keep making Short Treks.
All right, so why don't we say this, just for Picard. So let's assume the Short Treks get nominated in the short form. What about just for Picard?
Okay, so because let's do Short Treks for what is it, best short form?
That's right. Yeah.
So they get that. They win that, and now it's this prestigious thing, and they want to make more. that's okay. So then I could give my 2 Emmys to, actually, for acting, Alison Pill for sure.
Alison Pill.
Yeah, she's. I don't even particularly like her character, but that shows you how
she does murder a guy.
Oh yeah, she's just not my favorite character, but. Oh my God, does she act the hell out of that part? She's she's given a masterclass with what she's given, and just her everything, her mannerisms, the technical acting terms. That's not my forte, but she's outstanding. And I thought that we weren't going to have her at the end of the season. I thought that something wasn't going to bode well for her character. And I'm really glad I was wrong, even though she's not my fave, but because I was really sad that we'd lose Alison Pill, and we can't lose her because she's incredible. I think she deserves a nod for what she did in season 1 of Picard. And I'm giving my production to Michael Chabon for writing. And since I can't remember what episode they actually nominated him for, or want him to
Nepenthe,
be.
I think.
Was it Nepenthe? Mm-hmm. Absolute candor is what he gets. He gets a writing Emmy for absolute candor in my pretend universe, because it was just an outstanding little, self-contained, pure short story in a beautiful, gorgeous Jonathan Frakes directed package. And I love everything about it. So those are my 2.
I think for me, I'm going to go obvious for acting. I'm going to go Sir Patrick Stewart.
Oh, yeah. I mean, my God. Yeah.
I mean, what a tour de force.
He has to get one for playing Picard at some. He has to.
He's never gotten one for Star Trek. He has 4 Emmy nominations, but not a single one for playing Captain Picard.
That's outrageous. Yeah. And that needs to change.
90s Emmys voters have a lot to atone for.
Right. Well, in general, they never like sci-fi.
Oh no, they don't. And then I think on the creative side, I'm going to go a bit different. I mean, Chabon for sure, obviously. Huntley Culpepper for direction of the pilot. I love Remembrance.
Oh my God.
It's one of my favorite episodes of the season as a whole. And I think probably one of my favorite Star Trek pilots. It might tip Broken Bow for me.
That's a bold statement.
Yeah. I really liked it. It's sat with me a lot. I watched it nearly 20 times before the second episode came out, which was a lot.
Yeah. When I look at the list of what, what they're putting up, honestly, that's the one I thought had the best shot of getting a nomination.
Yeah.
Is her direction for the pilot. It's incredible. So I totally agree with you there. I really think she could get a nomination for that.
Well, neither of us are Emmy voters, but
not.
If you're listening and you are an Emmy voter, you can use Alex Perry and Jenn Tift's recommendations for whom to nominate from Star Trek Picard Season 1 for an Emmy. Well, since we're talking about Star Trek Picard Season 1, let's talk for just a minute about Season 2. Sir Patrick Stewart was giving an interview to Gold Derby, a series of interviews of 2020 Emmy contenders, and he talked just a tiny amount about Season 2 of Star Trek Picard. Almost not worth talking about. but there is just a little bit in there that we can sort of pull out to give us just the briefest hints about what Star Trek Picard Season 2 has in store. So I'll play just a very short clip about him talking about Season 2.
Because of how we're living currently, there is no writer's room, of course, but everybody is writing, and they're keeping me in touch with what is going on, and we have conferences and so forth, on video conferences. It's there are startling events predicted in Season 2. I'm so excited about them because it is taking Season 1 on from where we were. We're not going to be covering the same ground. And it's going to be, I think, extraordinary. I'm very excited about it. But of course, I can't go into details at all. But I have a long conference planned for tomorrow when I hope certain aspects of how Season 2 will develop, and I'm looking forward to it very much.
So as he says, startling events, very excited about them, not covering the same ground, and then not able to go into any detail about it. He does later in the interview talk about how he's uncertain when Season 2 will shoot. It was supposed to shoot beginning this summer, but that now is obviously very uncertain due to COVID-19. He reiterates what we'd heard before about more TNG crew appearing during the show. And also he says he thinks that Harry Treadaway's Narek will not be returning for Season 2 of Star Trek Picard, which, since at the very end of Season 1, we don't find out what happens to the character, would be a little disappointing, but we'll see if that actually turns out to be the case or not. Jen, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the startling events. I can't wait to see what those are. No, I mean, he didn't say anything too much unexpected, but it did bode well that, he seems excited for the next adventure. I like that they did also mention that they're not just going to ignore the fact that he's now in an artificial body, that's going to factor into his character, and it should. I mean, that's
totally
huge.
Why bother?
Right?
Otherwise?
Why bother otherwise? Yeah, and it makes it interesting. I'm really, I mean, his history with the Borg, and now he has 7 he can talk to. I can't believe that we're going to have a show, next season we're going to have Jean-Luc Picard and 7 of 9 on this same starship, and that's going to be insane. That's, I think, what I'm most looking forward to.
And would you be disappointed if Harry Treadaway did not come back as Narek next season?
I wouldn't be too disappointed if Narek didn't come back, but Harry Treadaway I really like. I think he's wonderful and did a wonderful job, but I think Narek's probably just going to be, in a Federation penal colony somewhere.
For the foreseeable future, I hope.
Yeah. No, but I think it would be fun too if they brought him back. Like if he is,
like a Michael Eddington thing.
Yeah. Like we should see him maybe not like as the main villain or the main antagonist, but for him to come back in like an episode or 2, like you said, like Michael Eddington or something. Oh, that would be great. I'd love that because he's great.
Yeah, totally.
He's great, and it would be really interesting to see him and Soji. It would be interesting to see him and Soji interact because we got a little bit of her, telling him off, but I'd love to see them interact again. As a matter of fact, I'd love to see like her be the lead if he does come back. You know what I mean? I think that'd be the most interesting to see him versus her, as opposed to like him versus Picard. But he's great. It's sad and happy because Narek, man. He sucked. He sucked really bad, yeah. But in a good way. He could be.
Oh, sure.
And he, you know what? I think he'd be a really good antagonist. He's removed from all that nonsense with his sister and family or whatever. Unless he's, going to get, he's going to avenge his sister, I'm sure. Oh, geez, he could come after 7. There could be all kinds of things you could do. But now he's acting alone, and that's when he was the best too. When he was alone.
Yes.
Towards the end of the season, doing his own plan instead of just being, like the, doing what, his sister
dweeby boyfriend.
Oh man, he's the worst. But yeah, so actually that'd be pretty cool. Yeah. So, guest appearances, not regular. Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, we've talked about the facts, and now let's speculate on what's going to happen in the future of Star Trek.
You make some very good points, Captain. But it's still all speculation and theory.
So each week, I and my guests give you a wish or theory we're nurturing about Picard, Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, etc., etc., etc. So Jen, let's hear your theory or wish for this week.
Oh, it's all happening, isn't it? I love it. Okay, well, I have two little quick ones. I mean, because the one we talked about, the short treks, and I wanted the short treks to win, because I want them to make more. And that's my wish is we haven't, that's the one thing we haven't heard anything of, any mention of another season of short treks. And I don't know what their metrics are for them to decide to make more. I don't know how that works with something like that, because it's different. It's not like, like a regular show, you say, oh, this many people tuned in or whatever. And this budget, or like budget constraint, whatever it is, I don't know. But it seems like it's a little bit more nebulous when you're making little short vignettes like that. I don't really know what the metrics are. And I'm kind of like holding my breath and hope we get an announcement that there's going to be more of those, because I adore that format. So my wish is that we do get an announcement that they haven't, dropped that ball.
Yeah, I hope so. The one thing I worry about is because we have an anthology of series and the intent is, there's no need to overlap shows. You're basically just looking to fill 52 weeks out of the year. But they basically run out of calendar space for them.
They don't need them anymore. That's what
exactly
I was
right. Yeah, when you're not having 6, 8, 9 month gaps in between shows, you don't need short treks to fill a month or two of that, because you're only doing 2 month gaps in between each of the shows. Now, I think COVID-19 might change that, because they can shoot some new short treks in a few days and get them out in a few months. Especially if shooting for Strange New Worlds and Picard ends up being delayed much further than the fall, because then we're not likely to get all that much in 2021 at all. If there isn't some shooting that takes place this year for at least one of those shows, then the short treks might become very attractive again, because you will have, big long gaps, and they do provide an easy way of filling them. But yeah, that's my one fear about it, is that we're getting so many series that there really just isn't any time left on the calendar to make the short treks to sort of have them fulfill their promise.
Yeah, it's just like doing a short form story like that is different than the hour-long programs that we get. It's just a completely different thing, and I really like that. But I get, so from a creative, obviously, so from a creative perspective, I think they should do more. But yeah, it's all the business decisions that I don't. Mm-hmm. That's the business side. I'm just really hopeful for that. So that's my wish. And then I have a kind of a fear.
Okay.
Second thing. Not to be a downer, but my fear is that because we got the announcement of Strange New World, I have a little nagging feeling in the back of my head that maybe we're never going to actually see the Section 31 show, because it just seems like, it's the same time period. It seems like in the beginning the plan was Discovery, Section 31, like we talked about a little bit earlier, and then the plan changed.
Yeah,
I don't know if they think it's going to be as big of a draw. I don't know. I'm worried because we haven't heard more about that moving forward. And I don't know how that would fit in with with the rest of the shows that they're offering. I don't know if it really fits as well. I'm hoping it does. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to all of them. I'm not a good judge of that, I guess. But so I hope I'm wrong, but I kind of just have this nagging suspicion that the more time goes by and we don't hear more details of that moving along, that it might not happen,
Yeah. The one thing that makes me think that that's not the case, that it is still happening, is, again, cycle back to January. Alex Kurtzman's sitting in that room. He gets asked a question about Section 31. He answers it as it's still happening, right? They've got a writer's room together. There was a bit of back and forth between him and Heather Caden about whether the show had been officially confirmed or just talked about. Right. But he definitely says, it's in development. And then he says, there are these 2 other shows that we've not announced yet. which means that in his brain at exactly the same time was sitting Section 31 and Strange New Worlds alongside it. He just wasn't naming it. If that conversation had happened in April of last year, then I would think, well, maybe things had changed. But January of this year is not that long ago for them to, at that point, they were conceiving of both of these shows together. I mean, I think timelines have certainly moved around, right? I think Strange New Worlds has moved up and Section 31 has probably moved down. But we know there's a writer's room together. I mean, it might be the case that the show doesn't ultimately end up sort of becoming a kind of 4-season, 10-episode, 13-episode a season show. Maybe it's sort of a mini series or something like that. But it does feel to me like, they've got Michelle Yeoh. They know she's a fabulous asset and resource, and they just don't want to lose that. And also, I think they don't want to say much about the Section 31 show right now because she is in Discovery Season 3.
Oh, that's a good point.
There's going to have to be some kind of story about...
some kind of time travel happening here.
Some kind of time travel. In order for them to tell us about the Section 31 show, we need to know what happens to Giorgio in Season 3 of Discovery.
That's a good point. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, I think that's probably also causing some of this under-wrapsness to it, but it definitely does seem like it's been... I mean, they can only film so many shows at once, and it sounds like Strange New Worlds is at a pre-production, which means it's got to be, if not next up in Toronto, very close to being... I mean, what else in Toronto would they be shooting? Because Picard shoots in California, so it's got to be next up for the Star Trek production, if that's where they're at, because they're not... Discovery Season 4, assuming it happens, which we assume it will happen, is going to be, at least a few months away because Season 3 hasn't even premiered yet. So, yeah, I mean, we know Section 31's not going to shoot, in the next 6, 8, 9 months because Strange New World's going to take up that. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to shoot in early 2021 or mid 2021 for a late 2021, 2022 premiere.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you're right. And I hope I'm wrong. And yeah, I think you're right. That does make me feel better though, because you're right. She is going to play a role in Discovery Season 3, and we got to wait to see what happens there, to see what's going to happen to her character. So
it almost feels like there'll be an episode in Discovery Season 3 where something happens, right? We're all guessing she travels back in time.
Yeah.
And then like the day after that episode airs, then there'll be some big announcement or interview about confirming the show is happening.
Or a short trek.
Or a short trek for sure.
That'd be a perfect use of a short trek. Come on.
Absolutely.
She just shows up at Section 31 headquarters. Oh man. I love it. Let's do it.
Okay, so I'm going to be wrong about this, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Go for it.
Star Trek Discovery Season 3 will premiere Thursday, July the 16th, is my guess.
Ooh, I'm going to mark that down on my calendar, so you better not be wrong.
I will definitely be wrong. That is absolutely not going to be the date, but that's the date I'm picking.
Okay.
So I think Discovery is going to come in July, and it's not going to be close to the 4th of July, which is a Saturday because everybody's doing stuff. So that means it's not going to be the 2nd. It could be the 9th, but I still think that's a little close to the July 4th holiday. So the 16th is the next Thursday up. Thursday's been the day for Star Trek. We've got 13 episodes of Discovery Season 3, and we've got 10 episodes of Lower Decks Season 1. Since Discovery Season 1, CBS All Access has been really averse to putting the holidays in between their shows. Mm-hmm. So if Lower Decks is premiering in 2020, I'm going to take that to mean it's going to broadcast all of its episodes in 2020.
Yeah.
It's now May. 5 months gone. We've only got 7 months of the year left. 23 weeks of those need to have Star Trek in them, which is 4 months. So you're really running out of 2020 runway. If they're starting to do the scores now for the first episodes, it means they're really close to finishing at least the premiere of Season 3. And if they can get into a rhythm, so 16th is 2 months from today. If they can get into a rhythm where they can get far enough ahead in the next 2 months where they're like 7, 8 episodes in on the music, then they can go ahead, because then they don't need to be ready with episode 9 until 9 weeks later than that, 10 weeks later than that, 11, and so on and so on. If you do that, so July 16th, you're then looking at the season finale of Season 3 would be the 22nd of October. 13 weeks, that's a really long time. Which then only gives you November and December to do 10 episodes of Lower Decks. And you've got Thanksgiving and Christmas in there. So maybe you do 5 before Thanksgiving and Christmas and 5 after or something like that. But still, like there's not a lot of year left. So to my mind, July, August at the absolute latest has to be when Discovery Season 3 is coming. And if they're now getting to the point of finalizing and locking episodes like they're totally done, it means they are close to it being on air. So I'm putting a pin in it here now, which I'll be wrong about, but this is my pin. July 16th, 2020 is my predicted date for the premiere of Star Trek Discovery Season 3.
Whew, bold statement.
A very bold statement.
Oh man, you know what? I hope you're right. I also, at this point, just don't care what it is as long as it's Star Trek. Give it to me as soon as you got it. And I think you're right. Like, is the music the only thing that's holding them up now? Because
I mean, it's one of the very last things they do to an
right?
episode. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I know that the editors have said that they're in all the episodes are locked.
Yep.
From that perspective. So. Yeah, I mean, it's too much. I don't know how long it would take to edit. You know, if you have like a 60-piece orchestra, individual pieces into one. I'm not sure how long. I don't know if we're talking weeks or months or what.
Yeah.
For that, but yeah, I don't know if they're gonna try to squeeze in both series in 2020.
If we take them at their word that they will,
then it's July.
There's just not a ton of weeks left to schedule all this stuff, knowing that they'll never overlap them.
Yeah, and I think you're right then. July's, I mean, if it was June, we probably would have already, I don't know how far in advance they would announce that.
CBS All Access did some like video where they were like, here's everything that's coming out in June, and Discovery wasn't part of that. Oh, and the Twilight Zone Season 2 is premiering in June, so they probably won't have 2 premieres in the same month.
Oh, how many episodes is that?
I think like 10, I think.
Because that's another, like if your goal is just let's keep people subscribed all year round to our streaming service, you're going to do your flagship. You're not just going to not overlap Star Trek series. You're going to try to not overlap all of your flagship series. And I know Twilight Zone is one of them.
Yeah, but with the amount of Star Trek coming, they're eventually just going to have to do that because otherwise it'll just be all Star Trek and never anything else.
That's fine.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's all I pay for CBS All Access for. Do you have a theory or a wish for Discovery, Picard, Strange New Worlds, or the future of the franchise that you'd like to share? Tweet them to me at WeeklyTrek, and I might feature your theory in a future episode. Well, that's all the time we've got for this episode of Weekly Treks. Thank you so much to my guest, Jenn Tifft, for joining me today. Jen, how can people contact you if they want to continue the conversation?
Yeah, you can contact me on Twitter. I'm at @EdaQuarks. And you can also catch my podcast, which is Snap Trek. And we're on Twitter also at Snap Trek.
And I just listened to the Nepenthe family episode, and it was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And you can find this show on Twitter at WeeklyTrek and me at Alexander T. Perry. And if you enjoy the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review of your podcast player of choice. And please check out some of the other great shows on the Tricorder Transmissions. And if you like our shows, please also consider becoming a Patreon of Tricorder, which you can find at patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. And lastly, if you're looking for Star Trek news on the internet, I hope you will turn to trekcore.com. Well, thank you, Jen. Thank you to all of my listeners. And until next week, live long and prosper.